Beer is one of the most popular and oldest beverages in the world. It is so popular that the only two drinks that are more consumed than beer are water and tea. You can find beers in shops, bars, and restaurants and see people drinking beer all around the world. Beer has become part of people's everyday life, either at social events or accompanying food. Yet thousands of people all around still have questions about beer. Here is everything to know about beer. The definition of beer is that it is a carbonated, foamy alcoholic beverage produced by boiling and fermenting. It is difficult to pinpoint the exact time when beer was invented. Most likely, the first fermented beverages came along with the development of cereal agriculture 12,000 years ago. It is believed that the hunter-gatherer tribes staying around various crops must have stumbled upon the fermentation process and started brewing beer. There is no proof of that, though, but it is a good assumption. Even if the exact time is unclear, it is sure that it was discovered by mistake. The evidence of the first beer points to the Middle East. It dates back about 5,000 years ago and was brewed by the Sumerians in ancient Mesopotamia. The evidence found by archaeologists were vessels with sticky beer residue and a hymn to the goddess of beer that reveals a beer recipe. What is more, it is known that it was women who invented beer. This might be a surprise as the beer industry is male-dominated. But it makes perfect sense as women were dealing with cooking and then stumbled upon a spontaneously fermented brew by mixing and cooking herbs, cereal, and water. Women were also initially master brewers until the industrialization of the production process made men take over. After the Sumerians, we can move to ancient Egypt, where it became the national drink. It was used all the time as a basic beverage, food, or even salary. At the same time, the Chinese came up with their own beers, which often were rice-based. By the Greeks and Romans, beer was seen as the drink of the barbarians. They appreciated wine more. During the 7th century, the first monastery and the beer of the monks were created. The art of brewing was trusted to monks. In 1070, the benefits of hops were discovered, and brewers started using hops to preserve beer and add more taste. In the 13th century, brewing started to spread outside of monasteries, and breweries came along. Unfortunately, the 30 Years of War was not kind to breweries and brewing beer became home-based. Breweries came back again in the 1700s when colonial cities in Europe grew. Finally, the Industrial Revolution brought us to modern brewing. Several inventions improved the brewing methods and beer quality. And the late 1970s and 1980s brought us microbreweries. Since then, the beer industry, especially craft beer and small independent breweries, has grown rapidly. Beer mostly consists of water. Around 90 to 95% of beer is made of water. Thus, water is one of the main ingredients in beer, along with malt, hops and yeast. Before hops were discovered, a mix of grains called grud was used. There are 4 basic steps to making beer. First, you need to get prepared and get all the ingredients and equipment you need. Then starts the brewing process, where you steep your grain and boil to create a wort. The third step is fermentation. And finally, when the fermentation is finished, you can bottle your beer. The answer is simple. Yes, you can make your beer at home. As an amateur brewer, you need to have the basic equipment, ingredients, and a simple recipe. Then you follow the beer making steps mentioned above. Beer brewing kits are kits that come with everything you need to make a beer. There are beer brewing kits for complete beginners, advanced brewers, or even microbrewers. Need to know more about beer brewing kits? Read about the beer brewing kits for brewing beer at home. Although beer is mainly consumed as a drink during an aperitif, it can also be found as an accompaniment to a good meal. Beer is sometimes used in recipes such as the famous Flemish meatballs or beer waffles. Beer can be included in a soup or a stew. You can use beer for marinating or for steaming mussels. People even use beer in pancakes, and they are delicious. Some gourmets also study beer pairings to know which beer to serve with which dish. Moreover, you can use beer for your hair. It is known to give hair more shine due to protein and vitamins. People have also discovered beer for fixing brown lawn spots in one's garden. Another use for beer is to loosen rusty bolts. The carbonation can help to get rid of the rust. Craft beer does not have the same definition as beer. In France, for example, the regulations are very clear on these two definitions. While both, by definition, are alcoholic beverages, then craft beer follows artisanal guidelines. Craft beer is a beer that is made by a small independent brewery traditionally. Regular beer is mass-produced, while craft beer brewers are focusing on quality, not quantity. When you discuss and describe a beer, you use certain characteristics. You will pay attention to the color, you will notice the aroma with your nose, on the mouth, you will discover the beer flavor. With your mouth and throat, you can also understand the mouthfeel or the body of a beer. Beers come in so many different colors, tastes, and aromas. Thus, beers have been categorized by style. Here are the different types of beer. Theoretically speaking, any glass would do the work. Nevertheless, beer glasses are made with specific shapes and sizes for specific beers. Especially in Belgium, you need to pay attention to beer glasses. The beer culture is so strong that it is very important to match the beer with the correct glass. To capture all the beer flavors and aromas, the correct glass is essential. What else is important to know is that before drinking beer, the glass should be rinsed with cold water, but not dried. Serving beer is a skill in itself. When not served well, you can end up with too much foam, for example. Tilt the glass slightly and start pouring the beer slowly. Once the glass is half full, you can slowly start straightening the glass and then smoothly moving the bottle, can, or draft spout away from the glass. Serving beer this way should leave you with the perfect amount of foam. Though beer cans are getting more popular, most beers are still in bottles. Beer bottles come in different sizes and also depending on the country. In Belgium, the most common beer bottle sizes are 25 to 33 cl. Bigger bottles between 355 to 375 ml are used for lambics. In Germany, the standard beer bottle size is usually 50 cl. In France, you can find many different sizes between 25 to 75 cl and even 1.5-liter beer bottles. In America, the standard bottles are called long neck, which, like the name, have a long neck and can be reused several times. You can also find a very big bottle called the growler that can fit 1890 ml of beer. This was designed to transport draft beer between breweries and bars. Beer is generally distributed through a three-tier system that includes the producers, distributors, and buyers. The producers are the breweries, buyers are the shops, bars, or other retailers, and distributors are the middlemen who bring beer from breweries to the buyers. Different people would give different answers to this question. Nevertheless, every year the World Beer Award selects a winning beer in different categories. For instance, there are awards for Best IPA Beer, Best Non-Alcoholic Beer or Best Blonde Beer. What is your favorite beer in the world? If we would say any other country than Belgium, we would not be credible. But we are not saying this only because we are from Belgium. It is true and Belgium deserves the title. The beer culture and history in Belgium are so strong that UNESCO recognizes it as an intangible cultural heritage. You can find some quality beers in Belgium in all kinds of styles. For any beer lover, this is the best country to drink beer. Belgium's beer brands are globally recognized, and the brewing methods brought the country on the map. Besides globally known beer brands like Chimay, Golden Drake, and Orval, Belgium has kept its beer reputation alive with new, innovative microbreweries like Brasserie de la Seine or Brussels Beer Project. With so many types of beers available, the people in Belgium enjoy all kinds of beers. Trappist beers brewed by monks in an abbey, of course, have made their name worldwide. Nowadays, the craft beer movement is taking over, so beers from various craft beer breweries have become very popular. Though Belgium might be producing some of the best beers, it is not the country that consumes the most. The most recent data from 2022 has shown that the country that consumes the most beer is the Czech Republic. It has the highest beer consumption per capita. The following countries are Namibia, Austria, Germany, and then Poland. There has been a race for the title of the strongest beer in the world for a while now. Breweries either want to make a name for themselves and their country or just want a challenge. The holder of the strongest beer in the world title is Snake Venom Beer by Brewmeister Brewery from Scotland. The beer has an alcohol level of 67.5%. Will anyone ever beat that? You might not even have heard of or tried the most sold beer in the world. It is called Snow, and it comes from China. It is also mostly sold in the country. It takes almost 30% of the Chinese beer market. The reason probably is that it is cheap and easy to drink. Beer is everywhere and nowhere. Or rather, beer is everywhere, but craft beer is not so easy to find. Fortunately, the shelves of supermarkets are increasingly giving pride of place to craft or local productions alongside industrial beers. For a large majority of the buyers, it is the main place to buy beer. Once you have gotten your favorite craft beers, you can go enjoy them at a friend's place or, if the weather allows, in a park. The second main place to buy and consume beer is in bars. Not all bars are alike. There is the local bistro that will offer a few draft beers and a dozen bottled beers. At the other end of the spectrum, there are specialized beer bars where it is not unusual to find 20 or 30 beers on tap and 100 bottled beers on the menu. The third place dedicated to the purchase of craft beer is the wine shop. On the one hand, there are the wine shops dedicated to wine which propose a shy beer section, but above all the beer sellers dedicate their whole business to local and foreign craft beer. Last but not least, you can also find craft beers in a restaurant. What better way to enjoy good craft beer than next to a good meal? Not all restaurants offer that, and many still stick with commercial beer brands, but some restaurants have noticed the growing demand for craft beer and have decided to put it on their menu. Some internet users are also curious to know more about what beer contains, such as its composition or the number of calories it contains. Other beer lovers try their hand at brewing beer in kitchens quickly invaded by the smell of hops and cereals. There are many resources to discover the world of beer. Books, workshops, and guides allow you to deepen your knowledge of beer. There are also beer blogs and beer podcasts. There are many lists such as Best Beers in the World, Strongest Beer, and Best Belgian Beers. Beware that these lists depend on the knowledge of the author. It is not surprising to find very well-known industrial beers on some lists while craft beers are sometimes forgotten. In some countries, you can also study beer. There are schools dedicated to beer and brewing, or courses and classes offered to learn about craft beers. If you consider becoming a brewer or malt stirrer, studies in the food manufacturing field are most appropriate. As we said before, you can find craft beer in a supermarket. The advantage is that you can do your grocery shopping at the same time. On the other hand, usually, there are not so many choices, and commercial beers still dominate the market. Also, you will need to do all the carrying. If you have a favorite beer brewery, you can directly buy beers from them. It is a good way to support a small microbrewery. Nevertheless, you will only get beers from that brewery, and you will miss out on the option of having a mixed beer box with beers from various craft beer breweries. This is the best option if you like to have a lot of choices, want to do the shopping from the comfort of your home, get fast delivery and not be bothered by taking the time to go out and get the beers. Buy beer online and get all the best selections delivered to your home. Very comfortable. If you want to buy a beer box or even several boxes of beer, it is best to order it online. This way, you can get beer delivered to you. No need to do some heavy lifting. Maybe a pack of 6 beers is okay to carry, but a beer box with 8, 12, 20, or even 24 beers gets more difficult. If you are a regular beer drinker, you should consider signing up for a beer subscription. This way, you can receive craft beer boxes monthly. How convenient is that? Someone is always taking care of your craft beer supply. Studies have found that beer can be good for health and have beneficial effects on the heart. Experts have said that women can drink 1 glass and men 2 glasses of beer a day without being harmful to one's health. Of course, you do need to drink beer moderately. Excessive drinking can cause harm. Be aware, though, that this study is focused on healthy people. People with serious health problems, addiction tendencies, pregnant women, or children should not drink beer. That now is a trick question. Real alcohol-free beer still contains some level of alcohol because the fermentation process has been taking place. In beer, making alcohol is always present, but certain methods have been used to bring the alcohol level low. This is why pregnant women, people in an alcohol rehab program or children need to be aware when buying non-alcohol beer. It still has a bit of alcohol in it, and honest brands will mark the low percentage on the bottle. If beer is advertised as 0%, then you need to question it and see if it is beer in the first place. It is unclear who exactly is responsible for inventing beer, but it is one of the oldest drinks produced. Beer was probably already around when the first tribes or communities domesticated cereal. With wild yeast in the air, any cereal containing certain sugars can go through spontaneous fermentation. The first record of beer dates back to 3500 BC and was sold in an area that we now call Iran. Beer became a vital drink in Eurasian and North African civilizations. During the Middle Ages, beer was one of the most common drinks in Europe. Now it is worldwide one of the most popular drinks. The use of hops in beer became common only during the 9th century. Before that, a mix of grains was used called gruit. Brewing was mainly a domestic activity until the Industrial Revolution. Then the new inventions allowed brewers to have more control in the process and commercialize it. What are the ingredients to make a beer? Water. Water is one of the main ingredients of beer. 95% of a beer is entirely water. The beer's quality also depends on water. Some ions in water can harm beer production, thus beer brewers are often paying attention to the water quality. Though, for home brewing tap water is also completely fine. The mineral salts of water differ by region, which affects the beer flavor and color. The hops. As we already mentioned, hops were not there when beer was invented, but it is now an essential ingredient. Hops is a climbing plant that produces lupulus, which gives bitterness to the beer. Hops are mainly used for beer flavors and aromas, but it is also good for preserving beer. Nowadays, there are a lot of varieties of hops, so beer brewers can experiment with beer tastes. Malt. Malt is a grain used in beer to bring out the sugars that can turn into alcohol. Malt is also used for beer flavors and aromas. The most common malt used is barley malt. Brewers also use wheat and rye malt. It depends on the beer style. Yeast. Yeast has huge importance in making beer as they allow alcoholic fermentation. Similarly, to malt and hops, yeast also contributes to beer flavor and aroma. What are the main steps to making a beer? Malting. You need to go through the malting process to make malt. The grain cannot be used in brewing as it is, so the malting process will germinate and then again degerminate the grain to become malt. Brewers often buy ready-made malt from malt stirrers, so they do not need to do it themselves. Brewing. This is where the beer brewing process starts. Once you have the malt, you can crush it and then hydrate it with water, which is called mashing. When ready, this mixture is put to boil. There are 3 techniques to do that. The first one is the bottom fermentation when the temperature is increased gradually. The second technique is steeping. Part of the brew is brought to a boil before adding it to the mash. Lastly, there is the simple infusion technique where water is heated and then added to the mash. Bittering hops can be added during the early stages of brewing to impart bitterness. Fermentation. Fermentation is one of the most important steps, where beer becomes beer as we know it. In this step, yeast is added to produce alcohol. The yeasts multiply and feed on the sugars and then release alcohol. There are different methods of fermentation. The bottom fermentation is when lower temperatures are used, and the yeast sinks to the bottom of the tank. The top fermentation is the opposite, using higher temperatures, and the yeast stays at the surface. Spontaneous fermentation is when only the yeast in the air is used in a suitable place in Seine Valley in Belgium. Sometimes a mixed fermentation method is used, which requires a combination of yeasts. Maturation. The beer is kept in storage where the yeast continues to do its work. During this stage, aromatic hops can be used to add aroma to the beer. Bottling and storing. Finally, when the beer is ready, we can put it in bottles and keep it away from any contact with oxygen. The best is to store it in cool temperatures. Some brewers also use refermentation. This is when yeast or sugar is added to the beer before bottling, and then the bottles are kept in warm temperatures for several weeks. This method gives the beer more complex tastes and aromas. How do you make craft beer? Brewing craft beer is following the same main steps as brewing any beer. The main difference between beer and craft beer is that commercial beer is mass-produced. Commercial beer also does not pay attention to the quality and taste as much. For mass-produced beer, lower production costs and profit are the most important. Craft beer brewers have a different mentality. When making craft beer, the focus is on taste and quality and not on the cost of making beer. Craft beer brewers are also more experimental and innovative with their creations. Can you brew beer at home? Of course. Many people brew beer as a hobby. With all sorts of brewing equipment available, beer brewing is made accessible to everyone. How do you make beer with a beer brewing kit? Beer brewing kits are there to help you brew your beer. Various beer brewing kits are available for brewers with different experiences. You can find brewing kits for beginners, advanced brewers, or even microbrewers. A beer brewing kit has the ingredients and equipment. You only need to follow the instructions and recipe, which is made pretty simple. What is left for you to do is dilute the concentration, fermentation, and bottling. Thank you for watching this video and don't forget to comment and drink responsibly.